Good evening. Welcome to this very special community forum hosted by the Citizens Club of Springfield and the State Journal-Register. I'm Bob Gray, president of the Citizens Club. Our goal is an ongoing community-wide conversation focused 24/7 on the importance of job creation. Jim Clifton is the perfect person to help us in our mission. It's important that you know that Angie Muse, Val Yazell, and John Allen were the ones who made this happen. So my sincere thanks to those three people. At this time, I'd like to, thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our co-host of the evening, Todd Sears, publisher of the State Journal-Register.
Bob, thank you very much. This is an exciting night. We are so fortunate to have Mr. Clifton here at this juncture as we prepare to start our Economic Development Corporation. We've got a wonderful panel with the mayor, chairman, and Bruce. And at this time, I'd like to introduce the executive editor and one of the three people that Bob mentioned, Angie Muse, who will serve as our moderator tonight. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Todd. And before we get started tonight, we'll discuss a little bit of some of the local issues that Mr. Clifton will be touching on later in his remarks. You probably know most of our panel here. Mayor Jim Langfelder was elected in 2015 as mayor of the city of Springfield after serving 3 terms as the city treasurer. His background before that was in banking with business development emphasis. Chairman Andy Van Meter of the Sangamon County Board has been chairman of the board since 2000, a member of the board since 1994. He's also the president of Design Ideas, a local firm, and as a job creator, employs about 50 people in Springfield and almost an equal number overseas. And finally, we have with us Bruce Sommer, who is the executive in residence at the University of Illinois Springfield Center for Entrepreneurship. He's also one of the co-founders of Innovate Springfield. So for the three of you, there's been a lot of focus on economic development, bringing jobs to Springfield. Tell us a little bit about some of the good things the city has going for it and the county has going for it, especially things that might be hidden gems that are a little lesser known. Mayor?
Well, thank you very much, and special congratulations for Bob Gray and all his works bringing the job wars to our attention. He brought it to my attention. I shared a book with, books to each of the aldermen. And thanks for bringing Jim Clifton here, and thanks for the SJR for your sponsorship. With regards to the hidden asset, I think there's two items. One is our greatest asset deals with no other capital city could survive nearly 3 years without a budget better than Springfield. And the reason is our people. That's our greatest asset. We're able to adapt. We're going through a retail change, and we're adapting in all areas of our community. So really the people are the drivers with regards to Springfield. But some of the hidden gems, everybody touts the medical community, and we have great hospitals with St. John's and Memorial Health Services. But what we need to do a better job of is promoting those entities. And one topic I'll touch on real quick is Memorial Health Services received the McKesson Award. And when I talk to individuals within our community and without, a lot of people don't realize how important that is. The McKesson Award is given to one service provider for healthcare, and Memorial Health Services won that. They competed on the global aspect of that, and they were number 2 in the world with regards to how you treat patients. It's all about patient care, how to provide those services. So they're the leader in that, and St. John's, they keep each other competitive. So we have a great medical community. The other aspect is our manufacturing. We have a lot of great manufacturing, light manufacturing. One is DVT, which is kind of an unknown, where they actually test equipment for NASA, for the military, right here in Springfield. We have Solomon Colors, a family-grown business. They're global with regards to cement, manufacturing of different colored cement. You've seen their work around town, but a lot of people don't realize that they're on the global aspect. Quick Wall's another one, and you go with the LRS, the Brants of the world, Buns of the world, but we have a lot, and it's all goes back to our people that really are the hidden assets within Springfield.
Additional hidden assets? The medical school is certainly one. It's a center of medical excellence, of course, but it's also a center of innovation. We were talking a little bit about that with Mr. Clifton before we came up on stage. There's a lot of invention going on at the medical school, and I think Bruce is trying to figure out how to turn that invention into entrepreneurial activity. We also have a good educational system here. We probably take it a little bit for granted, but we are turning out some excellent students here in our public and parochial schools. And a well-educated workforce critical to the jobs of the future.
I think I'll echo a few of those things, and there are, I think, hidden gems in this audience right now, and thank you everyone for coming out. I think it's amazing to see how many people are concerned about a community and such a topic as this. I see a good number of my students, I didn't require it for them, but there is an essay on the
But
impact.
it's noted.
Yes, I said there's going to be an essay on the impact of entrepreneurship on local economies, so what a great source here tonight. I can't, I don't know how hidden it is, but the, what things that are dear to my heart is Singman CEO program and the Innovate Springfield. I think starting younger folks into what you're going to hear tonight, the difference between innovation, or innovator, and entrepreneur. Entrepreneur are people who take action. And we want to encourage both of those things. And Chairman Van Meter mentioned the medical school, a lot of invention, a lot of innovation going on. Now I think it's our opportunity to match that innovation with entrepreneurs, people who can commercialize that and create jobs in our economy and our community. And I think hidden, the word hidden, many of you probably don't know that Springfield is number 15 in the Midwest for the best places to start a business. And that was by a very reputable organization called TechCrunch. I don't know if Angie, if you're going to mention that.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about some of the factors we
Yeah,
were talking about before?
They looked about 5 different factors, basically a number of startups from 2015 January to 2017 July of 2017. They counted for about 12 different startups that were of significance. And then getting funded. Many of those got outside funding from our community and some inside our community, venture capital. And then overall the jobs that they'll create or they predict them to create. So, hey, we're on the map. Springfield's on the map for entrepreneurial activity. So I think that's a big thing to celebrate and take advantage of. And Smart Assets is another organization that comes out yearly, and we've been in the top 1 and 2 for the last 2 years for the best place to start, or excuse me, the best place to work in tech, if you can believe it. And they take our 11% below median price of living plus 83,500 roughly for a tech job, which is about 1.71 times the average job in our community, and they say Springfield is a good place to work in tech. Now, only about 2.8, I think, % of our jobs are tech, but there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to take advantage of those trends.
So you've been talking about the assets we have here, the entrepreneurship that's going on right now. As mentioned earlier, we're in the midst of moving ahead with an economic development corporation. How do you see the balance between, feeding what's already here, working with, the attracting people who may not currently know about Springfield and getting them interested in it? Andy, do you want to take that one?
There are sort of 2 focuses for the EDC that's just beginning to come together. The first focus is on supporting the businesses that we have here, on bringing together the various entities that we have for workforce development, coordinating those, and making sure that their efforts are focused on what the businesses here, on training staff for that the businesses here need for their jobs. Just today I was talking with the head of Standard Aero. They have about 40 jobs openings right now that pay about $40,000 a year, and they are not able to fill those jobs out of this community, so they're going out to Rockford and Champaign to recruit to fill those jobs. So one of the hopes is that the EDC will begin to help businesses like Standard Aero reach back into the education community and help develop students who are capable of taking those jobs that are available right here in the community. The other focus of the EDC is bringing new businesses into the community, that has there are multiple factors in an outside business determination to come to the community, one of which is the job training, how well coordinated the job training effort is inside the community. One of them is the placemaking in the community. One of them is the educational quality of the workforce that's being produced in the community. Another is sort of the placemaking issues of the community, the social and entertainment aspects of the community. So the EDC is going to be working on all of those issues to try and make a stronger story to tell to outside businesses to come into our community.
Yeah, and to build on that, that's the key component, is telling our story, because we have a lot of strengths, which has already been communicated, but really going back to Standard Aero, that was recognized by the Capital Airport Board and Mark Hanna for a number of years. They've been working on an initiative that really became a true public-private partnership, where they partnered. They saw the need with Standard Aero. They didn't have enough qualified individuals to fill those positions, so they partnered with Lincoln Land Community College. And then the last aspect was building the aviation center, and Dick Levi and the LRS stepped up to the plate and made it happen. So that's the true public-private partnership that makes that happen. But the EDC will be a key component to build on what we've done already. And it's really important, whatever community you live in, you always want to build on your strengths. And so we need to identify those key target industries or target employment sectors and build on the businesses we have here. And so you need to identify the suppliers, the vendors that will help their areas grow, and those are the ones that we should really go after and bring them here. But our greatest recruitment effort are our people. Whether you're traveling on a trip or a business, you should have 5 key concepts that you know, and that's up to us as a community and the EDC, everybody working together, really promoting Springfield. So when you're out traveling, you can promote the good benefits we have here, or with your peers, tell them the great aspects or great assets that we have here in Springfield, so we can build our community together. But it starts on what strengths do we have and build on that, and the EDC will help not only do it from a regional, national, but also a global perspective.
Both of you have alluded to universities, community colleges, higher education, which of course is a big theme, as Mr. Clifton will be talking about later in his book about the role in job creation. Bruce, can you talk from your perspective a bit about a university's role? And also, in the news lately, the current state budget contains $500 million for the University of Illinois Innovation Center up in Chicago, but what potential does that have to affect us here in Springfield, that we have, a branch of the U of I system?
The state budget kind of delayed, I think, a couple of our activities, but now I thank all legislators or anyone who's participated in passing that. Yeah, we have the $500 million is reference to the system, not just to Chicago. And Springfield, we hope, becomes the first hub, what we call, there's going to be multiple hubs that spoke out of this Chicago campus, if you will. The implications for Springfield, besides being having its own innovation center, if we can, it does come to that, is that we will have access to those resources throughout the system. We have access to them now, but I think the degree and the collaboration that we'll see will be very surprising. I'm extremely excited. So the kind of execution of this is utilizing the industry that we have in Springfield, finding the experts that can add to those industry challenges throughout the system, not just in Springfield. And the Discovery Partners Institute is one of the kind of drivers behind this, and that also includes the University of Chicago and Northwestern University. So the idea behind that is a Springfield industry and folks here will have access to industry experts throughout that system, and our students will be engaged more fully throughout the state of Illinois, with the idea of the brain drain challenge, keeping those folks in Illinois, keeping them in Springfield to add value.
The chancellor has really battled to make sure we get one of the first nodes.
She's right in the audience here. She
Yeah.
can, yes. And she's done an amazing job in doing that, and
And
somewhat
we really
confident.
appreciate Chancellor Cook champion that aspect. They're partners in the Innovate Springfield project that the City Council helped support. And it's important that for us personally, the hub downtown because of our TIF. The other aspect real quick is there's 3 nodes named. One is at UIC in Chicago, the other one's U of I, and one's in Springfield. So we're going to do everything we can to really make that happen working together.
Okay. Well, thank you for a good overview as we get ready to welcome Jim Clifton. Mr. Clifton is the chairman and CEO of the Gallup organization, a role that he has held since 1988. He is the creator of the Gallup World Poll, which seeks to track opinion across the whole world. He's also the creator of the Gallup Path, a metrics-driven economic model. He is the author of The Coming Jobs War, the book that has brought everyone here tonight to hear him speak. And he also this month just has a new book out called Born to Build, How to Build a Thriving Startup. We're very grateful that he's come to visit us here in Springfield and look forward to hearing him. I bring you Jim Clifton.
Well, thank you, Angie. You know, Bob, I was sitting here. God, it feels good to be in real America. You know, I'm from Nebraska, and I moved to Washington about 20 years ago. You guys, just trust me. You don't know me. You've never seen me before. I used to be just a regular good Nebraskan. And you moved to Washington D.C. and you end up crazy very, very fast. but it feels. I was born and raised in Lincoln. And Lincoln's the capital and all that, but something feels very familiar here to me. That's all. Lincoln and Springfield are more interchangeable than you might think. My dad taught school at the University of Nebraska for 20 years and became a pretty famous researcher. You ever heard of something called StrengthsFinder? A few of you have heard of that. He worked about 50 years on that. Being a Nebraskan in Washington, I have an office in New York, that's where I was today. I'm sliding through here, and thank you for having me. But there's a story that follows Nebraskans around. I don't know if you've ever heard it or not. It's not a joke. It's a story. I don't tell jokes. I don't know why. So Nebraska used to have a great football team. I left and they went bad. I don't know what happened, but we had this. Nebraska and Oklahoma used to always be kind of 1 and 2, and for years, and they would just play each other. But we had a really big game in Nebraska. So people will introduce me in New York or Atlanta or somewhere about this story because, again, it's a true story, and it's not a joke. But a reporter from ABC. All the cameras there. It's Thanksgiving Day. It's Nebraska, Oklahoma. And she interviews one of our running backs. He's unbelievably good. I'm not going to say his name because some of you are my age and you know who he was, and it's not a very complimentary thing. But he was sitting in his chair, and he has his Nebraska football helmet, which just is a white helmet, and it's got nothing on it but a red block in. That's what it looks like. And so it's a huge game. And she has a sensitive question to ask him, a thoughtful question. She says his name, which I won't say. She said, if the N on your helmet didn't stand for Nebraska, what might it stand for? He really wanted to get that. He wanted to knock this one clear out of the park. And he thought, and finally he said, I'd have to say knowledge.
That's good.
So just remember while I'm talking, I went to that same school, and none of us are 100% sure how you spell it. So I had really the great fortune of becoming CEO of a company started by an Iowan named George Gallup. Dr. Gallup was an academic. God, his mission is so awesome to me. He wasn't really trying to build a business as much at the University of Iowa when he started as he was trying to find truth. The business came around it, and then some of us made it bigger and all that kind of stuff, so it worked. But
he loved America and he loved democracy so much, he wanted to make sure that we were always right about what was on the minds of people. He said, these people in America are here because they have a great American dream, and we need to know what that great American dream is, because in Springfield and Lincoln and Washington and all over, if we're wrong about what's on their minds, we'll make policies and legislation and we'll get off on the wrong track, and we'll have narratives that ruin the country, ruin democracy. So we got to go around and ask them. Somebody asked me, I don't know if I was in New York this morning or maybe it was in the car, I don't know, but somebody just said to me about what's one of the biggest, maybe in the car, Val, one of the biggest things that, this is it. The great American dream, I'm not doing world right now, I'm just doing great American dream. It used to be pray to the God that you wanted to, and then it was peace. So my generation was kind of Vietnam, my dad, my uncles and everything. That was World War II and Japan and Germany and everything. Wanted peace and a family, and they wanted to own their home. So the great American dream was somewhere in there. That was exactly me. On the University of Nebraska campus, I didn't care really what my job was. I just wanted a paycheck of I wanted a salary of $20,000. It all makes sense to me. I wanted to find a woman, have 3 kids, own my house, and have a station wagon, and I don't know, drive to Estes Park for summer vacation or something like that. And I was good to go. But that's been pretty close to all the old boys my age. That's what we were trying to do. Peace, kids, own your house and all that. It just changed. And it just changed, I'm going to say, slowly and then suddenly over about the last 15 years. A lot of it driven by millennials and a lot of it driven by women. Peace, family, own your, to having a good job. Now when I say that, initially it sounds kind of subtle. You might say, well, didn't they always? Nope. Having a good job is number one now. But it means, Bob, that in what you're doing here with your city, you know what you got to work? You got to work on a 100-year plan. The future's coming so darn fast. But you got to start with what the great American dream is. What's the will of the citizens? And if we were all just walking down the streets in Houston or Dallas or Los Angeles or Omaha or somewhere, and you said, hey, Jim, what's on the mind of all those people? I know what's on their minds. They're thinking about, how can I get a good job? A good job is 30 hours a week with a paycheck for an organization of consistent work. I want to tell you one more thing, though. That's a good job. And they say, well, don't we have a lot of those? Because the unemployment rate is, what is it now, 3.7 or 3.8? You guys, it's such a misleading number. Because what's happened in America is we've had our middle class crushed out, and they get crushed out, and then they go down to hourly jobs. So there's jobs around, but not good jobs. Because the other part of having a good job is it's got to come with a living wage. And if it doesn't have a living wage, if it doesn't have a living wage, you know what the problem is? So I have young people, they go, I got a college degree and I can't get a job for over $25,000. But now keep thinking. You can't get married at $25,000. And housing's okay. It isn't too bad here. It isn't too bad in Lincoln. Don't even get me started on the East Coast with that. You get $25,000, doesn't even get you a place to live. But see, we got to have jobs that are somewhere between, I'm going to say 50 and 125, depend upon where you live. But that's the middle class. But when you look at your 100-year plan, Bob, you got to be thinking, how do we build that middle class? Where do those jobs come from? Almost nobody knows. Washington, I'm not going to blame it on the Census Bureau. They collect a lot of this. And they're doing their jobs, so I am going to, and I don't mean to say the media. You got to get tired of hearing the media, but we report a number that's misleading that says 3.9. The number is as high as it's ever been in the United States for percent of adults that have an actual good job. This is kind of depressing, but when we had I'll pick this up, by the way, too, if you're depressed, going, oh my God, who invited him here? But when we had the recession, there was 10 million jobs that went out. Then everybody bragged in that we just gained 10 million jobs. Labor professor at Alan Kruger one of the most respected in the world at Princeton, said that of the 10 million jobs that came back, 94% of them were hourly and part-time and temporary. Who cares if 10 million, you see what I mean? That's not what America's trying to do. Here's the issue. It's the great American dream. It's the great American dream, and so we're not delivering it. Okay, but I wanted to say this. I put a team on this. So I have a regular job. We have a consulting company and all of this. But when things don't start to add up, I think they need to up my medication. I tried writing that book to see if I could get it off my chest. I wrote that book, and now it's even worse. It's getting worse. So I don't know what to do. But we don't have enough full-time jobs, good jobs with a living wage in this country. It's ripping us apart. So then you ask this question, where do good jobs come from? Nobody knows the answer to that. A startup is somebody where there's one person that's the proprietor and they hire one. It's a very high bar. There's only about 400,000 of those that start every year in the United States of America. There are just 400,000 of them. Now you'll read there are millions of them if it's one person, but those are like contract work, you know what I mean, self-employed and all of that. So you got to clean all that messiness out. But if you said, what are you going for here? You're going for startups with a proprietor and one person, because what we want to deliver here are good jobs with a living wage. And I want to say one more thing too. I believe there's no limits to what you can do. There's just no, we were talking about this. I'm gonna say one more, let me see if I can take this up. I don't like standing behind podiums, but so I'm on a plane from Germany coming back. They bring the cart by, and they've got a Financial Times, a New York Times, and a Wall Street Journal. Remember, the Financial Times, or the New York Times leans way left, and Wall Street Journal leans way right. Financial Times, I don't know what they're smoking, actually, I don't know. But on all three covers, I read that we're in a recovery. Well, that's a pretty important word. Because if we're in a recovery, that means, Bob, you don't need to get all these people together. We're in a recovery. So I called our chief economist down in my office in Washington. His name's Jonathan. He's brilliant. I think it's okay to say this. He's so boring, but anyway. So he sits across from me. He doesn't say anything. He just comes in, just sits and looks. He's brilliant. I said, Jonathan, I said, I just have one question. And I said, are we in a recovery? He gives me a one-word answer. He goes, no. And I said, how come I just read, yesterday coming back from Europe, I just read that on the cover of Financial Times that we're in a recovery. He went, I don't know. So that was my report from Jonathan. But the most feared economist in the world, and he's super down the middle and everything else. Have you ever heard of him? His name's Angus Deaton. But economists, if they hear his name, it's like they heard the name of Kaiser Soze or something. They go, oh my God, is he in the building? And he's up at Princeton. He got the Nobel Prize, I think, three years ago for something. But so I took the train up from Washington and walked into his office. I took two young ladies with me up there. I needed witnesses. I wanted witnesses. I walked into his office, and I know him a little bit, and I said, Angus, how you doing? He goes, great, Jim. He goes, what's on your mind? I said, I have one question for you. Are we in a recovery? He said, no. And I said, all these economists in this building here at Princeton, how many of them would agree with you? Just completely dead. He said, every single one of them. I said, Angus, how come I reading all these papers that were in recovery? He went, I don't know. But I'm getting a little nervous for our country because you get narratives that aren't true. And see, then what Dr. Gallup said is if you don't know what's on the mind of the people and you're wrong, you build policies off wrong premises, and the more you lead, the worse you make things. It's just an incredible point. But see, if we think we're in a recovery, if Washington thinks we're in a recovery, and the Fed in New York and Atlanta and everybody else thinks we're in a recovery, because we keep saying it over and over and over again, the kind of tools that you use, whether you raise interest rates, whatever you do, is almost the exact opposite if you're not in a recovery. I'm going to tell you one more thing, then I'll get off that part. GDP has been growing at about 1.7. You want to just say 2? I'm going to tell you what GDP is, because I've just been learning all this as fast as I can myself. It's all that we make and sell each other, and you just add it up. And in the United States of America, we make and sell about $20 trillion of stuff to each other. You guys, that's what human development is. Americans have done that better than anybody in the world. We've just kicked the butts of the whole world at making and selling stuff, not just to each other, but to people all over the world. We have exploded as a tribe of people. All left-leaning and right-leaning economists will agree. Between 1850, so let's say that man and woman have been around for 200,000 years. They really were doing a good job keeping track of them over the last 2,000 years. But if you said, were there any times in there, was it even? Humans don't develop in a linear way. They grow through explosions, something invented. But the biggest development time ever was between 1850 and 1950 in the United States of America, and we just kind of invented everything. Flight, transistors, I don't know, whatever you can think of, got it all, and turned it into commerce. And do you know that we became 40% of the whole world's GDP? Can you imagine that? I mean, there's probably only about 100 million of us at the time. Probably, I'm just making this up, but 4 billion world citizens. But think, a little bitty tribe like us dominated so much of the world. This is the part that we've got to fix. If I could give anything, Bob, if I had a dream, or if I could take all my Gallup stock and I would buy something, if every city in the United States of America was doing what you guys are doing right here, really going to work on this, we could turn this around so quickly. What happens when you've just had 10 years of no growth, where it's just even, what economists call productivity is you got to divide it by the citizens. You got it? So see, the population's growing, but the amount of stuff we make and sell each other isn't. And this is why you find that we don't have middle-class jobs anymore. Because it means that the amount of GDP per person keeps getting smaller each year. And that's the one that the economists watch, but the media doesn't. We got a lot of work to do. I'm going to say this as clearly as I can. I wrote that book a long time ago. This is just us against China. I don't want to make it too simple, but that's exactly what it is. It's not us against Russia. Europe has so many problems. China's coming. You want to hold these cards, not theirs. We definitely hold the best cards. China has so many things wrong with them. But for any of you that, if you take StrengthsFinder and you have competition as one of your top themes, this is the ultimate game that we're in right now. The total world GDP is about 80 trillion. That's about how much stuff is made. And we're kind of 22% of it. Used to be 40. But see, if we slip down to 12 and then to 8, America won't be recognizable anymore in our leadership in the world. I think I can say this in this audience. The world works better when America leads it. It has. It works better when we lead it. I'm even going to say dominate it. I'm only going to say economically. It doesn't matter about military, because there is no military unless we dominate it economically. But we can, and we can. I want to just tell you about two things. Let's see how much time I've just taken. I can't, if there was a window, I could see when it starts to get dark. But I want to just straighten this out on something today. We think the way that we create jobs and boom a city like Springfield is with innovation. I just want you to think about this. That's what all of America has decided. The whole world has decided that's how you get good jobs. We're supposed to be transparent here, aren't we, Bob? Mm-hmm. What if we're wrong? You ever thought about that? What if we're just dead wrong about innovation? You know, in Washington, everybody comes into town. I go on up to the Hill. I need 10 more billion for innovation. What do you need that for? Well, we need jobs. I know, I'm just asking you. Where does it say that innovation creates jobs? I didn't know that. I've never seen it written anywhere. Here's the thing. Innovation is very important. We've given it the wrong expectation, coast to coast. Innovation is the invention of something. It's creating a product. That's over here. We want that. Inventing something special, something in medicine, something in agriculture, whatever. We want to do that. What we don't do as Americans like we used to, or we're doing it at a lower rate, is those innovations have no value at all until a customer is standing next to them. We lost that. We lost that. And so what we're doing right now is we're putting billions and billions and billions and billions and billions into innovation, and then we keep watching. Did any jobs come out yet? Not yet. Well, then we better put billions and billions. We're just wrong. Over here is the other part. It's almost like a man and a woman with creating birth. You've got to have an entrepreneur. So we've been studying entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs way down they don't care what the idea is. Isn't that amazing? Oh, they got passion for it. You hear that and all that kind of thing. Way down deep, when you have a hardcore entrepreneur, they don't care what the idea is. They're trying to build something big, make a lot of money, and prove something. But until we separate those two institutions and really go to work on building we tend to have a lot of innovation. I went to this lady called me and she said, hey, I need you to come over to the National Science Foundation. And I said, when do you want me to come? She goes, now. I need you to come over now. So I went over. It's right there on Constitution Avenue. It's one of those cool buildings and stuff. Well, and there's only about 30 people in there. I said, what is it that you want? Who are these people? She has some stuff on me, so when she says I got to come over, I got it. Now, she doesn't have that kind of stuff on me. But I just owe her favors, so. But anyway, they were the heads of the agencies in the United States, of our biggest scientific agencies, NASA, NIH, and CDC, and all. They're really good people. And she said, I said, what am I supposed to? She goes, I want you to tell them that innovation's overrated and it's got the wrong. I went, oh, not to these people. And so she said, no, you got to tell them because they're all here. They're trying to put together $100 billion. I mean, the numbers are staggering. So I said, listen, you guys, I know a couple of them anyway, but I said, don't throw tomatoes or anything. I said, I just have a question for you. How many of you have inventions in your laboratories right now that just need a business model and could become as big as anything we've ever done with? God is my witness. Every single hand went up. Every single hand. One guy couldn't hold it back. He got up and he goes, I swear to God I have an invention bigger than the internet in my laboratory, and it's all it needs is an entrepreneur and business, whatever. You guys ever heard of Vint Cerf? So he got the packets to fly across fiber optics. That's the internet. That's the internet. So he and another guy named Bob Kahn. It's kind of like the Wright brothers got Lyft. He just walks around Washington, and I think I've written about the story. I think it's in the book, but he told this to me, and we're sitting at a table with our wives. It's very uncomplimentary about Vint. This story should be a theme story for this city's 100 years and for the whole country's. It's like Thomas Edison sitting there. And I said, how did this whole thing get started and all of that? Now remember, the internet was all built for the Defense Department. So the Defense Department had the internet to themselves. I mean, there's so much neat stuff there that's secret and all that. Well, a guy came over from the Senate that loved technology and said to Vint, I heard you have something, may I see it? Dr. Cerf shows it to him. And you know who the senator is, right? Yeah, it's Al Gore, but I don't like him either. So nobody likes him. I don't know what the deal is. But I like him now because I don't know what would it be like if he hadn't come over. But anyway, so he says to Vint, this is unbelievable. Do you mind if I go back to the Senate, create a bill, it's called the Gore Act, and throw this out to Commerce to see what they can do with it? You know what Vince said back to him? Fine with me, but I don't see what anybody will do with it. What a priceless conversation. But see, there it is. Maybe the greatest inventor ever. And then you throw it out to Gates and Jobs and Intel and all of those things. And Americans did something. I mean, you talk about changing the world, but see the difference? You wonder how many innovations we have right now. We may not need any more at all. You need to make sure you know the difference of those two as you do this. And if you want to have a city that really booms, you need to get good at this one. And I'm going to tell you a couple of secrets about the entrepreneurship one. But here's another thing that we found in our research. The whole country is not equally grinding down at the same rate. So important. And this is why you're doing the right thing here. Cities have very different outcomes from each other. There's huge variation with cities. I was in Tennessee, and I like Tennessee because it has Memphis and Nashville. I don't know if anybody's been to these places, right? But I like it, they're in the same state, obviously in the same country. But so they have the same federal regulations and they have the same state regulations. Everything's perfect for an experiment. Twins separated at birth. Memphis is kind of blues, you know, Elvis Presley and stuff. They got a little music thing going. And Nashville, of course, has country. There's not really money in the music like you think, but it's a really cool. It's a cool attribute to have for your city. On the same river, and wouldn't you think that they would have about the same outcomes? Memphis is devastated. I don't know how they're going to turn that place around. It's a mess. If somebody's from Memphis, I'm sorry. But Nashville is soaring. They have more startups per capita than Austin, Texas. But to me, it's very inspiring because it doesn't mean, when you guys get up tomorrow and go, what are we ever going to do? You can have a very different outcome than any other, than other cities. You know about Sioux Falls and Sioux City? I love those two too. Same on a river. They almost have the same names. And Sioux Falls might be pound for pound the best tribe of Americans in the country. Man, that place is booming. So many startups. But see, then you go right down to Sioux City. It's a mess, you know, peep shows and nasty casinos, and they just kind of gave up. But you have so much control of your own destiny here. You know, there's another one. The only good thing about being my age is that you younger people have to read about cities that rose up and all that. I was actually there when it happened. I guess that's only funny to me. But my favorite, I started a market research company in Lincoln, Nebraska, and sold surveys and all kinds of stuff. I got real good at cattle feeding and all that kind of stuff. But then as I got bigger, I traveled out. You know the town I couldn't wait to get to was Detroit. It was the richest city in the world. Think about that. Highest per capita. And the arts and music, I'm not just talking about Motown, man. Everything came out of that town. I mean, it was a mega city. It was the greatest city in the world. I'm not talking about 200 years ago. In my lifetime. And then I would catch my flight to San Francisco and take my plane and maybe over to New York. And they would tell me, don't go outside at night. I don't know if you guys, anybody my age was in New York or San Francisco at that time. Those towns were closed down. But then think of the different outcomes. Detroit crashes. New York and San Francisco come back and kind of save America. I would go down to Miami, and there's a guy from Nebraska that would scare me because what they did is the town had come apart so much. They brought in high school football lights, you know what I mean? But hundreds and hundreds of them, they tried to light the whole city up. You know, to try to keep the crime down and do all that stuff. You got to keep crime down before you can start businesses and all that. And of course, now Miami's just absolutely booming. I went down to Birmingham. This is so long ago. And Atlanta, you would land there, tiny little airport, a couple of planes. Atlanta was nothing. Birmingham was on the cover of all these magazines. It's going to be a gateway to the South. Isn't that amazing? Somebody was thinking and promoting and all that. You've been to Birmingham? Birmingham's been frozen in time for over 40 years. Nothing, just frozen in time. And Atlanta just boomed through the roof. Two guys there, Maynard Jackson and Andy Young. Boy, were those good guys. But you know what they were? They were builders. And they put together leaders in town, especially CEO and business people. I asked Andy Young one time, I said, what's the trick to this? And he said, you got to get the local CEOs involved. He says they have more connection to talent, they have more money, they can get stuff done faster. By the way, he's kind of stopping, he went, they have jets sometimes too. But you think about the difference you can make just in, I don't know, what would that be, 10, 20 years, something like that. Your outcome doesn't have to be the same outcome as others. Thank you, Val. Let me check my clock here so I don't do anything too bad. Okay. I'm going to tell you what the problem is, because I think if we can get through this problem, I think our whole country can just explode. And I think Gallup researchers have figured it out. The reason we're so good at innovation is we are great at finding high IQ kids. This is kind of cruel, but I'm going to do this with transparency in this room, right, Bob? And so when you have, there's about 50 million kids in K through 12 in the United States. If you said take those 50 million kids and line them up by their, I'm just going to say IQ, their ability to read, recall, and reason, we can kind of do it. For the state of Illinois, or you can go get them because those tests work on that. So if you have 1,000 high school kids, I have educational psychologists at Gallup. We can line them up 1 to 1,000, and those ones at the top will outread and do the ones at the bottom. But then, you know, although the students won't know who they are, students don't care. They want to know who the cheerleader is and the quarterback or something. But the teachers know who they are. And teachers love great little minds. So then they'll develop them. They get them on their way to Stanford, maybe MIT or some kind of thing like that. And then pretty soon to Nassau, and then to DARPA. Hell, they're inventing a whole bunch of stuff with no customers. But think of that system that America has to figure all that out. I mean, it is high development of intellectual property, and it works. God bless it. We need it, and Americans are the best. But now we got to shift over and make the other part, the development of the entrepreneurs, as intentional. I don't like sports analogies very much, but it works so well here. I don't know what it's like in Springfield. God, when I was growing up in Lincoln, if there was a good running back within 1,000 miles, we knew about it, you know? There's a list of blue chip quarterbacks, point guards. You know, you get those things everywhere. You can go buy magazines. They'll list the California high school quarterbacks you ought to go after. Give their 40 speeds, their body strength. They'll tell you what their vertical jump is. Who cares about vertical jump right now? But anyway, vertical jump is. And they got all these scores on them. And I mean, you tell me, you line them up by you can line them up by speed. You can take the ones at the bottom. They'll never beat the ones at the top. If you want to do something, go work at the ones at the top. They'll just keep getting faster and faster and faster and faster. I was someplace recently, and they had a young woman came out and sang the Star Spangled Banner before we started. It'd be kind of like right now. I don't know how old she was, 14 or whatever. She had pipes like Whitney. If you close your eyes, you go, that's got to be Whitney kids come back, you know? Well, how good do you have to be to go, yeah, she's a superstar? But you can we're really good at music and entertainment. We know, we have real good star orientation. See, right now, if you have 1,000 high school kids, what we need more than anything is not to figure out who the point guard is, not to figure out who can play the saxophone or whatever. We need to know which one of them can build a big company, build a big anything. And you know what? None of us know how to do that. And it's even worse than that. It's an argument. Then we start saying, well, what's the difference? Now we're looking for innovators? No. You're looking for entrepreneurs. You're looking for people that they don't know what they do. It's like the beaver in the jungle. Who knows what beavers are thinking? They get up and they just build those dams. Flood comes and washes them out. They go, screw it. And they build it again. They just build stuff. You got to believe that some humans are born a little different like a beaver too. But what we need early identification of them. Gallup is making tests as fast as we can. And I don't like the word tests, assessments. There's a lot of people that can fit into that initial petri dish. When I started a market research company, you need an alpha salesman person. You need an alpha salesman or saleswoman that'll go out and get customers. If you don't have that, just give up. It'll never work. And you need a real high potential one. But then that person needs one more person. They need a manager. They need an alpha manager. A lot of times these people, like Steve Jobs, like Ted Turner, are crazy, awful managers. But you need a real good manager to keep the promises, make sure that you got talent, pays the bills, and all those kind of things. But the other thing, and this is true for if you and I start a taco restaurant or a Mexican restaurant here, you also need an expert. So for my market research company, if I would go to Cargill and they would bring in some people, I had one old man that I would bring in that was an advanced statistician. It was always the smartest guy in the room. And they say, well, you use latent class modeling or meta-analysis, what do you use? I don't have any idea. I go, Gary, what do you do? But those three things, but see, there's a lot of room. So it doesn't just mean if you're an alpha entrepreneur that there's no room for anybody else, because all of us have some of those three. But the point is, in a town like this or a town like New York or a city anywhere, we somehow have got to get early identification of those and put them in some kind of special treatment. But I think as soon as we do that, I think that we can turn all of our GDP, all of the good jobs that we need. I don't think there's any limits at all. I'm going to end it by making one comment that has to do with, I think, a really rich mission and purpose that you have. I think I'm looking at Bob when I say this, but you got to get this right, because it goes beyond people like me, somebody my age. And the problem is that the kids, millennials, judge their life now more by their job, who they are, what their importance is, what their worth is. Can I find a man or a woman and have a family and all of that? Do you see the point here? So for me, when I first started some kind of jobs, I had a warehouse and construction, whatever, I didn't care if I had a bad boss. I didn't care if I wasn't doing anything important, because that wasn't me. But there's a big shift that's happening, and it happens here just like in every town. But the millennials, if the job that they have doesn't have meaning, then neither does their life. So you say, how do I hold people in Springfield? How can I attract stars? But see, if you have an image that we really go to work on your development, we really help you get a good job, and if you want to build something big, this is the town to go to. Remember, you can build a big nonprofit too. You can build a very big children's museum. They all have good jobs and all that kind of building, but it tends to be mostly corporations. But I think if you put some of those building blocks that we have found in our data right out front in a 100-year plan, I don't think there's any limits to what you can do. Thank you very much for having me, and have a good rest of the night. Thank you.
to have some further discussion, based on some of the things the four of these guys were talking about before we got started tonight. You were talking about, one theme in your book is tribal leaders. Can you talk a bit more about how that works in a city, especially this size? And then, I'd like to have our local folks weigh in on how they see that phenomenon happening.
Well, I think you have tribal leaders here. I mean, it's somebody that's got to take a responsibility. There's probably some number. I gotten to know Omaha pretty well. Gallup has a 50-acre campus there. There's about 20 people in Omaha that if a decision needs to be made, and this is not city council. City council has their own things to do. Politics not. This is all outside of that. I don't think we should look to Washington. We should look to city council. I don't think we should look to any for this. As Americans, we got to fix this ourselves. But there'll be about 20 people here. 20 people is a pretty good rule. You can go out to 100. Sometimes that's another tier. But that's a group that gets together for breakfast. And I was going to either move the campus to Omaha or maybe even to Colorado Springs. Boy, they get together and then they figure out how they can do it, how they can clear some land on the river. But that's the committee to get it done. And those are your tribal leaders. A tribal leader really needs a chief too. You don't want that to be a committee. You ought to have a tribe group somewhere between. It could be 6, it could be 20, and then you need to have a man or woman is chief of that tribe, and then they deal with the key issues, all set on your 100-year plan, all set around jobs, all set around economic growth.
With regards to that, I think in Springfield, we have pockets of individuals that work together and get things done, and I think that's where the EDC is trying to cross over, where you're trying to break those barriers so everybody has that common goal, looking at a more regional approach or local approach to really the core aspects that would make our community better as a whole. And so I think we do have tribal leaders. Sometimes they're out on their own, but other times they do work in small groups. But the real key, I believe, is so you maximize your resources to be as efficient as possible, especially when we're at a time with stringent budgets, is how do we work together with the private sector being that driving engine. But we do have great private sector leaders that can work in that capacity with others in those other groups. But the real key is working together.
The studies that we found here is new leadership or new leaders is important, especially as we evolve through entrepreneurship. I won't say innovation, but entrepreneurial activities. Any suggestions?
I didn't know what you were saying was turning into a question. One of the things that helps is if you got to have some stars. I did a poll so long ago about I think it's on, isn't it? In Atlanta, about whom do you admire? God, everybody wanted to be Ted Turner. There's a company in Lincoln starting that just started. Oh, it's called Huddle, Hudl. There's no reason you'd ever heard
No,
of it.
we know them here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ralph knows them. Okay. We're customers. We're one of their first customers, actually. Yeah.
Well, but that's a perfect example. So you got 3 kids, exactly, an alpha entrepreneur, alpha manager, and alpha inventor, or the alpha expert. The entire town all kids want to become Huddle. But you need some, I think this is in line with your question, but you need to have some people that young people can look at and say, I can actually become that. They did it, I can do it, I know them. But you need you need a couple signature wins, and I think that's a good way to break through.
In your book, you talk about the importance of mentors, mentors developing people who go on to become entrepreneurs. And you tell the story of George Gallup and a young man coming in and saying, I think we ought to use this data for advertising. And that young man turned out to be Mr. Ogilvy of Ogilvy and Mather.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about the community's obligation to mentor people.
I'm getting tired of the word mentor. I just want to say it to you because it's getting used so much. I don't know what it means. And it usually means that you take low-income people to a baseball game or something. You know what I mean? So I hate that kind of stuff. Or you take them to the club and show them how to putt or something. I don't golf. That was dripping with cynicism, what I just said. But what they really want, the young entrepreneurs, they want somebody to take an interest in what they're doing. And boy, you take an interest in it, and I don't even call that mentoring. So sometimes I'll invest in them. I got some guy, man, he's such a nut. I mean, this kid can just run through walls. But I just have phone calls with him. Then he tells me what he's going to do, and some of the things are so stupid, it's just incredible. His name is Siobhan. I go, Siobhan, you got to be kidding me. Where do you come? These ideas are horrible. But they, it's funny. I think they interpret them as that you love them, if you, because you're taking an interest. And I sit there and hammer it out with him. But I think when these businesses start, they do need. If you can have some old guys around that go, don't do that. You don't want that investor. Do not give those shares away. You're getting it diluted too much and all that. You can really step in and save them. But I call that more transactional than I do mentoring.
You talk about the story of the young man who, the son of the lady that works for you, who, I think at a very early age, 9 years old or something, mm-hmm. You began a relationship with him to sort of show him a path to where he could fit in the community, that he could make a difference. Ultimately, I guess you offered him a job at the Gallup Corporation,
Mm-hmm.
but is that sort of thing the kind of thing that we should be trying to do systematically here in the community?
Definitely. I'm starting a thing at Gallup in Washington, but it's called Straight to Work. I don't believe, take this the right way, I don't think kids need to go straight into college. So I've been testing real low-income people in Washington. There's a university called University of District of Columbia. The graduation rates on it look like it's a typo, and they're so bad, But what I'm trying to, I'm sorry about the word but what I'm trying to do is prove that they're just as prevalent there, these superstars, because it looks like God was very egalitarian when he handed this out. So people that have this unusual ability, it's the same with Hispanics, same with blacks, same with whites. Here's the big one, it's the same with men and women. The lowest hanging fruit is with women. So we've been testing thousands of low income, basically all black and some Hispanic. But when we test them, we found 10, I mean this in a loving way, but freaks of nature. We think that they can build organizations of any size. This is so interesting to me. I went to a really famous school, a real high prestigious school, I'm not going to say their name, but they have a school of innovation and entrepreneurship that's one of the most famous in the world. And he said to me, will you test my 50 kids? He and I know each other, and I said, so I sent them all an email, and they took it. This just blows me away. We're counting on that school, that university. We want jobs to come, we need companies to come out of there and all that. All 50 scored 0. You see what it is, though? They're putting kids in. I guarantee their SAT score, I bet all 50 of them are 1600s. See how off we are? And these are really well-meaning Americans. But then if you go down to poor Washington, D.C., and boy, things can get really poor in Washington. I got 10. They don't look right. Some of them even have kids and that kind of stuff, very young ages. But if you had to bet your car and your house, you'd bet it on those 10 in Washington, not the 50, not the 50 there. And one kid is so talented, I called him in. His name's Deshaun. This is just recently. So he's graduating from one of the, I don't know which one it is, but he sat across from me. But he can build anything. We've never seen anybody like him. He's 18. He sits across from me. And I said, I want to shoot you a deal. And he goes, what is it? And I said, I want to just ask you not to go to college. Just come to work at Gallup. I'll give you $40,000 and then a bonus at the end of the year. He goes, what would my job be? We did this in like 20 minutes. The way he's going to get his degree is I'm either going to get it for him from the University of Nebraska, maybe George Mason, or maybe an HBCU, Bowie State or something. But then he'll go through and get classes, and I'm paying for half and he's paying for half. I'm going to do this with 100 kids. I put a bunch of money into something out west and a whole bunch of money into something in DC. But I think the trick, you guys, if you really have your courage up, I think you can find these kids in high school and put them straight into business, put them straight to work at 18. But now you need the good mentoring, and they do need a college degree. I'm not saying that, but get one that's highly related right on the job. But so, yeah, I think our mentoring, or whatever you want to call it, needs to become much more intense. I've done this for 2 summers. These kids come in, it's funny because they're all they're African American, and they see the old white guy, and they all kind of like, oh, save us and let us get out of here, kind of a thing. But they really love being they love being in the halls doing business, and we give them hard work and everything, and they turn into us in 24. They look like us in 24 hours. The way they cut their hair, and they get all, and then they all want jobs and all that kind of thing. But I think that there are disruptions that are just around the corner where the results for cities like yours and for the whole country are going to be. I think our whole education system, that's a whole other topic for another day, but badly needs disrupted.
Is your data at a stage that you can say with some confidence, in a community like ours with about 200,000 people, how many of these entrepreneurs are here somewhere, if we could just identify them?
How many kids graduate from high school a year? Anybody know? Just get me close.
6,000, something like six.
Yeah.
No.
6.
Five to six, right? 5,000 to 6,000, something like that.
It depends upon where you draw the where you draw the line, but you'll have a minimum of 100 unusual people in there, and you'll have no idea who they are because they might be funny looking, and you can spot basketball players or something like that. You can see them visit, and you can hear singers and all that. This you can't tell, and they don't. A lot of times they don't even present themselves very well. And they're, it's not like that they have this incredible presence and all that kind of thing. What they have is they tend to have God gave them a really unusual dose of determination, and we don't really have anything to pick that up. But when you do, you've got a really valuable little citizen right there.
I know in my generation I can think of 2 that grew up here in this town, left. One went on to found a company called Sangamo, which is a name familiar to all of us living in Sangamon County, which is now a company on the cutting edge of gene editing and employing I don't know how many thousand people. And another is Auto Nation, which is a nationwide chain of auto parts companies. Maybe we didn't know at the time, but they went on to found really major companies. Unfortunately, not here. We let them get away.
But you can keep them. There's a lot of, there's a rule of 3 relationships, and that's, I think it's real important for a town like this to know, but if you have a hot kid, man or woman, you get them in 3 real strong relationships here, and they'll stay. What you got to watch out for is where there are none, then they go.
The Global Entrepreneurship Monitor would say about 14% are participating in some sort of entrepreneurial activity. But you're distinguishing that from, I think your book, Born to Build, is 1,000, out of 1,000 you found 3. Is that the right data?
Well, I don't like that finding very well, but but that's the question. That's answering the question: how many Steve Jobs are out there?
Gotcha.
And so there's 4 million kids that graduate from high schools in the United States. That's all there is. That sounds small, doesn't it? But you see, what you really want is when these 4 million kids graduate, you'd like to know which one of them, you'd like to put a blue chip on the ones that can build something. But so we had a question by some really good Americans that said, how many Steve Jobs are there? Potential. Given the right environment, somebody close. we think it's about 0.5, where they are really wired differently. So 0.5, what did I just say, 4, that means that there's 20,000, isn't this incredible? It means that when kids graduate, this right now, it means that there were 20,000 kids that can build something with sort of no limits. God, Apple's getting close to $1 trillion. But it's just amazing. We don't know which ones they are.
We have a Sangamon CEO, which selects individuals through a interview process, and Bruce can explain it better. But they're looking for individuals in high school, seniors that want to go on, or at least have that experience of developing a business. So, do you know of any methods, starting even in the grade school or in the high school level, that really help identify those or try to narrow down the individuals, or what type of personalities tend to be better entrepreneurs than others? I would imagine that all kind of interrelates. Do they have to be outgoing, or can they be introverts, or what are some of the methods that you could point us to that would help us kind of identify the up-and-comers?
We have a very specific test for this. Gallup does. Some universities have tests, but you need to use somebody's testing for this, so you have that advantage. If you make a 100-year plan, say, what are you trying to do? Remember, the gift that they have is that they can create economic energy where none previously existed. That's an unusual, that's like a magic trick. You say, how do they do that? They have a gift to create a customer. But our universities, that's kind of a long answer, but those kids already have fun having customers. I was watching, I invest quite a bit in lemonade days. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
You've heard of lemonade days? But kids go and sell lemonade, and once they pay back the lemonade, they get to keep the money. And they're little kids. I saw this I shouldn't call them little kids, but it's a very young woman in downtown Washington, D.C. She just couldn't believe it, because she'd paid money back, that she got to keep the money. But you could see how it felt to her. It changed her medically. She made $700 over 2 days. But she learned that she could create a customer. It was easy for her to jump out and go stop people. Well, you look hot. Don't you want some lemon? But our universities are still teaching innovation and that kind of stuff. What they need to develop, and I'm sure it'd be easy for you to do, we need to develop deeper customer science. But so you can have customer science in high school. You can have customer science in junior high. And there might be some kids that don't understand it, but the builders, they'll get it and love it.
As we wrap up, you've talked a lot about the perils of mistaking innovation and entrepreneurship. Are there any other common pitfalls you see communities commit when they're pursuing jobs? And I guess just basically any parting advice for the community here?
I liked something, I don't know who said it this morning, but somebody said we got to know what our strengths are. I mean, it sounds so fundamental, but with your leadership group and your tribal leaders, you need to keep your strengths right out in front of you. You'll have weaknesses here, like, oh, people want to leave, or you see what I mean? Don't spend as much time. You got to mess with that. You got to be aware of it. It's got to be transparent. But the real key to these communities where they boom, like Sioux Falls did, or Atlanta did, or whatever, somebody's got a real genius for getting the strengths together. And that's the strengths together of the city, but it's also the strengths of the citizens too. But the better you can figure out how you get a city using their strengths and the citizens using their strengths, that's sort of where you get the ultimate explosion. I better go.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Clifton, for being with us tonight.